And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another off-season supporter series chat. As I told you guys, I'm trying to find some state league people to talk to, and I found another awesome gentleman to sit down and have a chat. We'll find out about what club we're going to talk about here in just a tiny bit, but let's introduce him, Mr. Darcy Evans. Thank you for joining me today.
Coach Donnie, thanks for having me. What a pleasure it is. A little old guy here from Adelaide is interviewed by one of the legends over there in America, so halfway around the world. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'm not sure about legend there, but I will say this. This is a lot of fun to talk this absolutely fantastic sport. It is one of the reasons I do these, because I love the stories that I potentially can hear from some of the footy supporters. So let's get going. Before we get into the footy, I want to find out just the tiniest bit about you as a person outside of the game of football. So just a real quick bio of who you are outside of the game of football.
Yeah, so I'm married to Karen. I've got two daughters, Tegan and Madison. They're 24 and 22, and Madison actually played Aussie rules here for 1 year with my beloved Flinders Park Football Club a few years ago. So I just love all sports, Donnie. So I think you may have seen my Facebook page. And last week I've been to the baseball. Our Adelaide boys are in the finals. I've been to the Tour Down Under. Was here with the Tour Down Under, and I love all sports. So and look forward to the Adelaide baseball boys in the grand final this week. So big good luck to them as well. So hopefully there'll be something in the paper this time. So there's anything in the paper last week, which is a bit unusual, but all good.
Yeah, this might come out a little bit after that grand final, but good luck to the Adelaide Giants in their grand final when it comes to the Adelaide baseball. It's fantastic to see baseball growing over there in Australia, but we're here to talk about footy. So I'm going to ask this, you being in South Australia, it is a footy mad state. I got to ask, what is your favorite thing about the sport of football?
It's just the greatest game in the world. I was listening to Mackay Aussie or Alice, I would say Kim Harrison, because obviously a lot of all the boys at Flinders Park and West Torrens Woodville know him as Kim Harrison more so, but it's just the greatest game to watch. Even when I was playing, it was the greatest game to play as well. It's a team sport and play with your mates, and it's just a great thing to watch as well. So it's just there's action all the time, and I've been involved in it since I was 10 years old. I've just loved every minute of it.
Fantastic. And I agree. I found this sport later in life, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And the people that I have met have been fantastic. So I'm going to make you think a little bit. I want you to go back into the recesses of your memory here. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
I certainly can. It was at Banksy Park Primary School. So that's where I grew up. It's about, it seems like it's about 3/4 hour drive northeast of Adelaide, and the under 10s there at Banksy Park. And my father actually coached me out there. So he was my coach at the school. He put his hand up, and then I moved on. I went to Prince Alfred College, a school here, and I played school there, and then moved on to West Torrens, where I met the great man Mackay Aussie, or Kim Harrison, and then we both went out to our beloved footy club, Flinders Park Football Club, and but then Kim he tried out at West Torrens, didn't quite make it, but then he tried out at Woodville and made a name for himself and played quite a few games out there before he unfortunately did his knee.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I'd heard he'd actually had quite a good little career there, and I joked with him. I said, "Did he think he could go far in it?" And he humbly answered that one for sure.
He'll tell you how good he was as well there, mate. So as he does, but no, he had a great. I really admired him because he's the boy from Gawler, which is I'm not an hour drive in Adelaide's like miles away, but probably where you are, it's probably just around the corner. But boy from Gawler come down and gave it a shot, and actually did very well with Woodville. And as I said before, unfortunately, he did his knee, and it put him out of action.
All righty. Well, we've kind of had some clues a little bit. What is the SANFL club that we are going to be talking about today, and how is it that you became a supporter?
It's the Woodville-West Torrens Football Club. So it actually, funny you say that, Donnie. It actually started. It was originally West Torrens and Woodville. So West Torrens came in the competition in 1897. So they had a long history. And then the Woodville club, which is, I think they're only about 4 or 5 k's apart. The clubs, they started in 1964. And obviously very close clubs. And it come to the end of the 80s where they were thinking about a side in Adelaide, an AFL side in Adelaide, because obviously Queensland had one, New South Wales had one, Western Australia had one, but South Australia didn't. So they were sort of held off for quite some time. And then Port Adelaide did put in an application, and the Crows came over the top and they had a team in. And the board at the time must have thought, well, this is going to be pretty tough now with an AFL side in here and the Woodville-West Torrens so close together. So they actually agreed and they had a meeting and they actually merged in 1990. So the Woodville-West Torrens Football Club formed and they played their first game in 1991.
Fantastic.
And it did work out for the best in the end because they were two teams which were unfortunately on the bottom of the ladders most years in the 80s, but they ended up winning the premiership in 1993. So the merger did do some wonders for them, and they've been very successful ever since.
Fantastic. And how is it that you became a supporter of the club?
I was a supporter as a kid, and then actually ended up playing out there because where I grew up at Banksy Park, the teacher gully was their zone. So I ended up out at West Torrens, and been a player, and then I was a supporter ever since. Then in 2015, I actually went on the board of directors. So I was on their board for 6 years and loved every minute of it. 6 years, I got off in 2021. And both my wife's parents are both life members out there as well. So they've been volunteers for some 30 years out there as well. So quite funny story there too, if I don't mind. But so before the merger, my father-in-law was a West Torrens supporter and my mother-in-law was a Woodville supporter. And obviously my wife was a Woodville and West Torrens. And my mother-in-law said, well, you can't marry my daughter until, you just can't because of the Woodville connection. But then they merged and she said, okay, you can marry her now because obviously we're one team now. So that's quite amusing. And then we actually got married in 91, which is their first year as the merged entity.
That is fantastic. I love the story, and it actually is a great connection. You kind of gave some connections of how the Eagles are your family club. Is it one of those? Is the entire family West Torrens Eagles fans, or are there some black sheeps that have picked some other SANFL clubs?
No, it's the whole family. It's like my in-laws and even my parents and my sisters were all West Torrens because obviously, when you grew up in here at Teacher Gully, and then we happened to move down the west suburbs, and then the zone changed. So now Woodville-West Torrens become the zone where we actually moved to. So it's always just been, and the Oval's only a few kilometres up the road. So we go to all the games for years and years, and took my daughters. They grew up with it, and then when I was part of it on the board of directors, they loved being part of that as well, and met all the players and just the whole family, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've already kind of answered my next question. I wanted a little bit of the history, so you already gave that. So we'll go to my next one.
Sure.
What's your rival? Who is the rival in the SANFL that you always want to beat, and why did they and why is that?
Norwood. Norwood is probably the number one, closely followed by Sturt. Norwood. I've got to say this the right way. They're sort of the eastern suburbs, the upper class of the area. So we think their supporters. Look, they're very passionate, don't get me wrong, but we just think they're a bit upper class, and there's always a bit of fun banter going on between the supporters when they play each other. But it's definitely Norwood number one, so then closely followed by Sturt.
Awesome. All right, we'll stay with the past a little bit here. Can you remember the first Woodville-West Torrens Eagles item you were ever given or bought?
It was yes, it was. Should have brought it down here. I've got an Eagles little gnome. So I had that since I was about 10 years old, and it's around. I still got that actually. It's in here somewhere. So it was West Torrens, as I said, because of before the merger, I was always a West Torrens boy. So everything was West Torrens. And I would have had a tuffle coat back in the day with all Eagles numbers on the back, and that gnome and T-shirts and scarves. I sort of collected everything back then.
Fantastic. That's awesome. I love hearing those. The little trinkets sometimes are something you don't always think about, but those are always fantastic. Okay. My next question that I have, this is one of those I love because I've said to many, fandom is it's a fickle thing. It's very different for everybody. Nobody fans or supports the same way. So I like kind of hearing people explain their fandom. So could you describe your fandom for your club? Are you a diehard? You have to see every game that you possibly can, or is there a way that you can kind of keep yourself back from being that crazy person that just thinks nothing but Woodville?
As in, for myself personally, or just the supporters itself, or a bit of both?
For you.
For me, I'm a diehard, yes. So I go to every game I possibly can. So I don't sit in the hill and scream and shout and abuse the other opposition players or the supporters. But I certainly love going to every game, love watching every kick and analysing afterwards. And then you have a chat to the players afterwards. But it's certainly a very diehard, as my family is as well. We're there every week as much as we can. I couldn't last year because I was tied up with a basketball club, but who played Saturday nights. But I certainly if they play Sundays, I was there with bells on. I watched the reserves as well, which is the game before. So I watch all the future generation of the Eagles as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. Absolutely love it. It's like I said, I'm a little far away from doing that when it comes to my club in Sydney, but I'm up at 4 a.m. if the game starts. That, so I know exactly that feeling. It's not exactly the same as being on the ground, but I'm there. I'm watching, I'm tweeting, I'm talking about it because I love interacting and I love watching and being able to support my club as much as I possibly can, even though I'm 12,000 kilometers away. So, alrighty.
But as you know, Donnie, it's sort of an outlet, isn't it? Like like you come to the weekend, it's great. You've worked all week, you've worked hard. So it's an outlet where you can go there on the hill, have a couple of drinks, meet, talk to people and cheer. It is a bit of an outlet, and it's like a little hobby at the same time. That's what it's really that good part of what football's all about. Well, any sport really, but football just gives that real analogy of can't wait for that Saturday or the Sunday when you play.
Yep, it's the anticipation you build, and then the fact that you can go back and forth with other supporters and chat like, what do you think's going to happen this week?
Yes,
this is who we've got. You'll watch the preview shows, you'll watch all that stuff. So it becomes kind of routine. I tell most people, I said I'm sleep deprived during a lot of the summer because I'm up at ungodly hours sometimes on the weekends because of the fact that Sydney will play at 2 a.m. and my time. So I'm up at 1:45 to watch the game at 2. The game will end about 5-6 o'clock and I'm either super excited or super bummed, and then I can't sleep, so I'm up for God knows how long until the next day. So I definitely know that. So as you said,
and that's passion too. When you get up at 4 o'clock, Donnie, that is passion. I tell you, seriously.
Absolutely. I've had Sydney respond back with dedicated exclamation point after a tweet when I was like 4:25, and when the primetime game at the MCG against Melbourne, the game started at 4:25 a.m. my time. So it was pretty interesting that the club, whoever the social media person was, put that list like dedication 3 exclamation points from the Sydney Swans. It was like, well, at least somebody's recognizing it. So absolutely. So as you kind of said, so Woodville-West Torrens is a combined club. So can you remember the first ever game of, I believe it's West Torrens, you said was your side. What was the first ever West Torrens or Eagles games you ever attended?
When I was a boy, when I was about 9, 10, 11, I think my father took me along. He was a South supporter, but obviously me being a West Torrens supporter, he took me along to just, again, every game. I played school football in the morning, and then off we go to the footy in the afternoon to Thebby Oval when it was, or wherever the game was being played. So I've been a mad supporter for many, many years now. Number one, just loved it.
All right, so we'll test this. I love this because you have many, many years of watching. So you've probably got a Rolodex of all of the players that have donned the Eagles jersey. Do you have a favorite one of the past, and do you have a favorite player currently on the Eagles list?
A favorite one in the past is Andrew Page. So he was. We were actually friends in the juniors, and he went on to better and better things. But he's now a life governor of the club. That's how much he put into the club. So he is a wingman. He gave his father played for West Torrens as well. So his father and his son played close to 300 games for both the Eagles. Then when they merged in 1990 onto the Woodville-West Torrens Football Club, he was picked up by Essendon from memory in the mid 80s, but he didn't have going because he said, "I just love my Woodville-West Torrens Footy Club." He stayed there, and he was a wingman, gave everything he possibly could, and won numerous Best and Fairest awards, and just an absolute champion of the club. And the recent times, it's probably looking at Scott Lewis and Luke Jarrod. They're both retired now, but I think they played over 200 games in the club, both Best and Fairest winners, and just they're the ones that you really go and watch on a Saturday. They're just, you see, these are the guys the kids must look up to and say they gave their heart and soul to the club, and they're both life members now, and just fantastic players for the club. And love used to watching them. Very hard, tough footballers, which I love in football. And and they're still, believe it or not, I think they're in their mid to late 30s now. They're still both playing football, which is great, just for a local club in the amateur league.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Okay, I'm going to ask this. I'm pretty sure of this. We were talking before we started recording that I told you I listened to the Rush Hour when it comes to South Australia, and I believe somebody on that Rush Hour was a Woodville-West Torrens player. Did I hear correctly? Bernie Vince donned the Eagles jersey, and if he did, what kind of player was he?
Yeah, that's a good memory actually. So Bernie Vince certainly did. He played for Woodville. Back in, I don't think he played for that long because he was drafted pretty quickly. I think he probably only played the 1 year and got drafted, and he went on to some fantastic things for the Crows. So yeah, he did as an Eagles boy. He didn't come back. Obviously, I think he was pretty oldish, if we can use that word, when he retired. So he's obviously didn't want to come back to the Eagles. But certainly, his name's up on the board as an Eagles boy to get picked up by the AFL draft. And yeah, he comes back to the club occasionally, which is great. It's good to see them come back to the club, and just he's given a few talks there, and there's a bit about his life experience as an AFL player and his time at the Eagles.
Yeah,
he certainly was an Eagles boy.
Because I remember, I think in one of the episodes recently, because Woodville-West Torrens won a premiership in the last couple of years, and I think he was supposed to be the cup ambassador. And I remember him, I guess, talking about carrying on like an absolute Muppet because of they won that particular premiership, and it was absolutely fascinating. So I had to ask what type of player he was on that. So
no, sorry, he was an awesome player. I think everyone knew he was only going to be there for 12 months. Like I think he was a junior. I think he was like 17, played league, and 17 got picked up pretty well straight away. He was always, you read the papers, Bernie Vince picked up from the Eagles. It was always going to be that sort of player, and he went on to fantastic things, and good on him too.
Alrighty.
Because he actually is in our zone in York Peninsula from memory. I think he was born in York Peninsula, so he came over here as a boy from our zone over there and did very well for himself, country boy.
Alrighty. I love this one because I love seeing the sparkle in their eyes when they talk about this. Most memorable moment as an Eagles supporter.
I'll be the first premiership when they merged, actually. So we'd been there, both Woodville and Eagles, unfortunately, during the 70s and 80s, they didn't have much success at all. And then when they did merge, there's a lot of heartache when two clubs with such proud tradition, it merged. Even when I was on the board there, Donnie, that I'd walk around the oval just to say hello to the spectators. And I still get, 30 years later, I'm still getting, hey, Das, when are we moving back to Thebe over to play football? When are we going back to the blue and gold or the green and gold? But so a lot of heartache. But when they did, when they won that first grand final in 1993, I think that technically brought everything together. And the coach, Swartz, he actually said on his speech, there were some hard decisions. This is on the podium, made the speech, goes, there were some very hard decisions made a few years ago by the board, and this is the reward to have that merged entity now. So that, just seeing that grand final, which I thought I'd never do for both Eagles and Woodville, but we saw that game. And going back to the Oval, there was thousands upon thousands of people there just cheering. Obviously, that both the supporters of now can celebrate a grand final together. So I'll never forget that, ever.
Fantastic.
And I said, to see my mate Andrew Pays that had given so much to West Torrens, not thinking he'll play, and then to see him play in that grand final, and he was just, to see that a mate that played in one was just amazing as well.
Fantastic. I love seeing the sparkle in people's eyes when they talk about their favorite moment, because it is something, for many of them, it is something they will never forget. Absolutely love it. So we're going to go to a little bit more current times now. We're going to go off last season, and I had to do some research because I don't like asking a question and not knowing a little bit about what's going on. So I got to ask, Woodville-West Torrens last year just fell a tiny bit short of the finals, going 8-8. Not a bad season, not a great season, unfortunately. So what are your thoughts on the Eagles last year?
So that's a very good question, Donnie. So you probably, on your research, or we won the 2020 premiership. You may maybe talk about this later, but and then the 2021 premiership. Now, when you're so successful as a club, you do get depleted by a lot of drafts. And we, from memory, I think there was between 18 players that didn't play in the 20 that would play in the 2020 grand final that didn't play last year. That's how much we were depleted by, whether it's players being picked up by the draft, whether it's just general retirees or just players moving on as well. So when you get that many players leaving the club, it was pretty hard to try and get everything back up and running again. But it was rebuilding. Don't like using that word, but yeah. So obviously the coach Jay Sheedy, he did a fantastic job coming in to win two. Yes, he was depleted by a lot of players leaving, the draft picks and that. So the James Cheetahs, then we also had like Ryan Mansell, they picked up by Gold Coast was James, and Ryan Mansell by Richmond. It did deplete us a bit, but I think what I'm seeing this year and what I've heard, we've gone out and got some very good caliber players. And I think we're going to look good again this year. But quite right, it was a year that wasn't the best after two premierships, but there was reasons behind it, and I think we're looking good this year.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. In fact, yeah, and you kind of said it. The off season, it was interesting when I did my first chat with the state leagues, because I'd always wanted to know, how do the state leagues kind of do their lists, because I know it's not like the AFL. You don't have like a draft, you don't have the sign in trade period like they do in the AFL. So primarily it is, you find free agents, you sign them, you try to find somebody. There's no trades, anything like that. So do you keep an eye on Woodville-West Torrens off season? And then kind of what are your thoughts on that? Did you bring some players in? Do you have some retirements this year? Kind of how is the Eagles off season?
Yeah, so we've that's a good question actually, Donnie. So what we do have, like, there's some ex-players that actually coaching over Victoria. So they sort of watching out. We had a guy, well, James Cheetahs. He is the one that come and played 2 grand finals, and now he's playing for the Gold Coast. And a guy called Sam Alson, he was also played for Coburg. So when we had an ex-player that's now coaching, said, hey, you need to look at these boys. I think they've got a bit of potential to go and play AFL. So they came over and ended up playing grand final. So we do have people in the state that do watch out for us. This year we've got about 4 or 5 recruits. Now, believe it or not, Donnie, that we have borders here. We've got a man cave out the back. It was supposed to be a man cave, but ended up being a team cave, and ended up being, so we've got borders that come over here, and they come over and live out the back. So we had a couple of, now look, this is so bad, I just forgot their names. I should have written it down, but one's from Tasmania. Yeah, one's from Tasmania. He stayed with us for a couple of weeks, and then we had one from in Port Douglas, believe it or not. So because so we had a guy that used to play for the Eagles, now playing for Port Douglas. He said, look, you should have a look at this guy. He's pretty good. He was looked at by some AFL clubs a few years ago. So he's come down now, play for the Eagles, and the same in the Tasmanian League. We had an ex-player that's looks for players around there. So we've certainly got people out there that say, hey, look, you need to have a look at these guys. And we've recruited probably 3 or 4 from interstate. And Eagles are really good, Donnie. They do promote within as well. I think we've got the highest rate that we do promote internally from our juniors. That's why we've been so successful. Our under 18s have won like 10 grand finals roughly in the last 13 years, because we do encourage that. We do promote the under 18s to go and play high level as well. We do need those interstate recruits just to fill some gaps where they are. But we're looking at the goods with these few recruits we have, and hopefully they can bring home the goods with us this year.
Fantastic. So that the common transition from there, what are your thoughts going into next year? When I originally wrote this question, I put expectations, and for me, I don't like the word expectations. I really need to change it, but I always forget to do it. Kind of, what are your thoughts going into next year? Do you think the Eagles bounce back and make finals next year, or is it kind of wait and see, because footy again can be quite cruel at times?
Yeah, no, this is obviously talking from the heart, not from what I want. I think we should do very well. What I've heard with the recruits we've got, they fill some gaps that we had last year. We've now, again, I should have written some names down. We've got a ruckman, because obviously with the retirement of Jared Redden, who was our ruckman, used to play for Port Power as well. He's retired, so we actually have recruited a good ruckman that's got some good had some good references from him, so which is great. That fills that gap there. So and I think from what Jay Chitty's a bit of a mold man, and when he comes, he just says, look, we're training well, we're doing what we can well, but I think deep down we all know that this is going to be a fantastic year for the boys.
Yeah, awesome, absolutely fantastic.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I told many people I'm working on this right now, and I'm going to put it out there a little bit, because I've been thinking about it. Is this year I've been discussing with my main host, because I've told everybody I really want to get into state leagues this year. So this year I plan on, keep an eye out, ladies and gentlemen that are listening to this, I'm going to do some state league reviews of some of the games. We're going to try to bring in some experts. I have somebody for the Waffle. I believe I have somebody for the VFL setup. I'm looking for somebody that's a SANFL nut that loves watching all of the clubs in the SANFL, because I want to do some state league reviews and see how the state leagues are going, because I think it's really good to not only talk about the big AFL, but also to talk about the state league too. So I'm going to put it out there. That is one of my projects this season, is to not only cover the AFL, but also the state leagues as well. So if you know somebody that is a SANFL nut that would love to be able to hop on probably once a month to tell me how things are going in the SANFL, I would love to have you on. So now that I've done a little bit of
that's excellent, Donnie, because that's awesome. Someone again from America is going to promote SANFL over there. That is, it's just great to watch SANFL footy. AFL, sometimes I can't watch it. It's a little bit different, but SANFL footy, they let the play go a bit. The umpiring is not let it go, but they certainly just let it flow better. The kids can go on the oval at halftime and after game. They can, connect with the players. It's just a great football game to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the other thing too is that the connection to town and city I think is even bigger. I know the AFL is a conglomerate. It has a little bit of the NBA vibe over here, where there's a little bit of don't argue a little bit to the fans, not as much as over here. I agree with what my friend Craig Wessels, the Yank on the Footy, says. Is I think many sports over here, they've priced the stars out of normalcy, where it's not so much over there in Australia, which is one of the other reasons I absolutely love it. So I'm going to have some fun.
Absolutely.
Everybody over here in the States thinks that they can do the list manager or the GM job better than the people that have the job. So I'm going to have some fun with this. So for one day, I'm going to install you as the Woodville-West Torrens list manager. You can make one move, bring in one player to the Eagles to give you that chance to win a flag this season. Who's that one player and why?
That is a damn good question, Donnie. I've never even thought about that. But just look, if you look at what were the, obviously there's been a lot of delistings. You probably look through the delistings and just find a gap. Now those names I probably don't know, but look through the delistings if they haven't found a home already, because obviously we've had the draft, we've had the rookie draft. Just have a look through those and just see if there's any gaps with a need like a centre half forward. Was there a delisting there from a club that we could bring over here, or a centre half back or a full back or some of that nature? But certainly look through the delistings is the number one priority that I'll be looking at. And I'm sure the Eagles have done that. I'm sure every SANFL club has done that as well, and just sort of fill those gaps where they can. But that's the list manager that is number one priority. Who's been delisted and where can we use that player?
Yeah, it'd be fascinating. I know that for some people it's the flashy midfielder, it's the Brownlow medalist type of person, and sometimes you get the person that they really know the team really well, so they find that one little hidden gem to stick in their one weakness point, which is always fascinating. So I'd be interested to see. I know North Adelaide's had a couple of really good years. It'd be fascinating for a couple of those players to maybe nick one to kind of limit North Adelaide's abilities a little bit, but it'd be fascinating for sure. Yeah. So
yeah. Now, good on North. They did recruit very well the last couple of years, and I think just looking at the recruiting this year, I think a lot of the delistings that have been picked up, or a majority of them. So I think they've obviously grouped them all together. Okay, where can we use them? Picked up pretty quickly and brought them over to Adelaide. As I said, we've got the two from interstate, and they've stayed here, and now we can watch their journeys at the same time as well. Hopefully, get picked up next year.
Well, and the funny thing is, I really want to talk to a North Adelaide fan because technically they're our sister club. It's one of those things that I think I've told it. I
did notice that, Donnie.
The North Adelaide Roosters. The original logo that we started with to kind of get the club going was North Adelaide. We got a hold of them and we're like, hey, we're looking for just a base so we can put T-shirts out, so we can kind of. And North Adelaide was super nice about it, and they let us do it. But unfortunately, over the years, we've lost contact. So it's one of those. I really would love to get in contact with North Adelaide again, because it'd be awesome to maybe reestablish that, maybe see if they could send us over some training jumpers and things like that, because I mean, we're very proud of the Roosters name, considering this state is very farm heavy. So I know we're the Eagles chat, but I just thought it was interesting.
I know just the person too, Donnie, so leave that with me. I'll send you some names.
Fantastic.
Exactly. So I know a lot of people around the place. I know, and they love talking as well. So
that would be great.
Have it get on.
Awesome. Truly appreciate it. Okay. Anybody that watches this channel knows I am a huge advocate for the women's game. I think the women's game is one of those, it is a growth area that the big AFL really needs to continue to stay with, because it is a growth area for all clubs. With the growth of youth, women's and girls footy is exploding throughout Australia. So I ask this, do you keep an eye on the Woodville-West Torrens Women's Club? And if so, what were your thoughts on their season last year?
Oh, Donnie, absolutely. I was actually there on the board when they entered the competition. So I was actually being there from day one with the girls, which I'd say is 2017 or 18. And look, they haven't had good years yet. We've had, I think haven't made the finals yet. But I think, again, when the last they come into the competition, I think they're just rebuilding and just having a look at what we can do. We've got a new coach as of last year, so this is her second year as coach. I think, and I saw some good things happen last year. So I go to their games, and look, as I said, it's exploding, Donnie. I think it's a new marketing area for us to use. It's new memberships that we have it's good for everything about the club, for money wise, for just good marketing. People can go watch other games. If we have the women, they may play afterwards, so they watch the boys before and stay on and watch them afterwards. So it's really to keep the spectators back at the club, spending money and keeping them all together as a group. But it's the best thing. As I said, my daughter played Aussie rules, not so much for West Torrens, but for my local club here at Flinders Park. So it's just new, everything new to them, and that's why it's exploding. They just need to keep. The funny thing is, Donnie, that obviously with the new change rooms, I'm not sure if you're probably aware that change room used to be the boys and the open showers and everything else. Now, and I get it. Now they're all sort of changed to the cubicles now, so they never quite understand what it was like to throw tape at everyone after the game and have a beer. But look, and that's the way it is. It's fantastic that they're spending money on doing up change rooms as well and doing up club rooms. It's just awesome for the whole game as well.
100%. I told many of the guys with the club over here, I said, if we could get a women's team going, I think it will help recruiting men and women, because I think it's a way 100%. It's a way to combine everybody, and it gives you that opportunity of showing diversity. So absolutely love it. I think the women's game is so worth it. And there are times I've said it in a few of my podcasts. I think the women go harder at the footy than the men sometimes. And I don't care who would get angry with me. I really do believe that.
They certainly do. But
I think
you'll see you see the improvement over the last 2 years. It's been amazing, and good luck to them. I hope it does, and I'm sure it will grow from AFL level and draftees, and I think a lot. I think it's excellent for the game.
Yeah, and so many more pathways for the women now to get there. They don't have to stop at 12 years old. So I am thoroughly cannot wait for these next 5 years, because I think the better players are coming, and it's going to be fascinating when it does happen. So we will go. We've talked about it a little bit. The AFL, everybody usually, if they're a footy fan, has an AFL side, because it's a national comp now. So I gotta ask, do you have an AFL side? And if so, who is it and why?
I do. So it's Carlton. So I'm actually a mad Carlton supporter, and probably a lot of people say, Das, what gives, you're an Adelaide boy, so sure it's either Port Power or the Crows. But I started following Carlton back in the 80s when, you may not know these names, but Stephen Kernahan, Craig Bradley, Motley, Nayley, they all went over to Carlton. And I just thought, back when I was a lad, I thought, this is good. Even though they didn't play for the Eagles, but hey, they're playing for Carlton, they're Adelaide boys. And I just kept, and they won the 87 grand final. So I was only a lad, and that was pretty good. They were always in the finals. So I thought, gee whiz, they've just won a grand final. And I just kept supporting them. So Adelaide Crows came in, and it was a composite side. So, but no, and then Port's sort of a side, as you may know, that's like a Collingwood. You either love them or you hate them. So I just kept supporting Carlton. And as everyone knows through my Facebook, I'm a mad Carlton supporter.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. The thing though too is, and I've said this when I did I've done some Carlton chats. Like I talked with Blue Abroad on that, and I said Carlton is one of those teams this year that terrifies me, because they're young, they're talented, and they're just finding out how to win. I'm scared to see this team in the next couple of years, because I think they're only going to get better. And then also revert that to the women's side. I think the women's side is very young. They've struggled the last couple of seasons, but I think if they can get a little bit more talent around it, they've got some great players. It'll be just, can they gel a little bit? It'll be fascinating to see how it goes. So I think honestly, when it comes to your AFL sides, both women and men, there's a lot to be proud of when it comes to the Navy Blues. So
I think, just think how we did struggle for many years. And then obviously we're 2 points out making the finals last year. That's how, I think Michael Voss is still he's probably cut it now, but scratched his head for a minute. How do we lose that game? We were up by so much during the third quarter, then lose it by 2 points. But that's how close the Carlton were from, obviously struggling years before to just missing out the finals. I think Michael Voss has gone just nicely. As you said, Donnie, that the next 2 years is going to be, I think, just watch this space for them, I think.
Oh yeah, if they can maintain and just add here, their draft well, they're going to be scary. They could be the next dynasty for sure if they can keep people together. It's going to be interesting to watch that. So I'm going to ask the next couple of ones. Again, they're AFL connected, but they're fun ones that I just want to hear your answer to. And this first one is the grand final in 2020 and 2021. The grand finals found itself outside of Victorian soil for the first time. And I was surprised that Victorian media, which is primarily Victorian based and want to talk mostly Victorian, actually started the topic of should the grand final, again, 50-year contract, let's suspend it for half a second. I know it's pie in the sky comment section, calm down. It's one of those where I was surprised that they were talking about should the grand final become a traveling grand final? Should we give this opportunity to host the biggest game in footy every year at different events? And I was surprised that they brought it up. So my question to you is, what are your thoughts on that? Or are you somebody that you like the tradition? It must be at the MCG.
Definitely not traditionalist. I think to be a true national sport, we need to travel. So whoever finishes or qualifies to have the home grand final, it should be played at the home grand final. Now, I'm with you, Donnie, that I've argued this point to many people. They like the tradition, but no, if you qualified to have a home grand final, that should be at the home grand final. It just seems silly sometimes, Donnie, that you get two interstate clubs playing the MCG in the grand final. Now that just because it just seems like nothing. But you get, if it's whether it's Adelaide, whether it's the West Coast, if they qualify, it should be played at Adelaide Oval or that new stadium in Perth or at the SCG. So to be true national competition, it should be played whoever qualifies to that home grand final.
Yeah, because I brought this up one time to Victoria and I kind of stumped them a little bit. And I understand that you want the grand final there, but how popular is the grand final going to be if one day some craziness happened and it's Gold Coast versus GWS?
100%, Donnie.
And they stopped because I said that's what you're telling me. I said, I understand your tradition. And again, the 50-year contract has literally made this a moot point. But I told that, I said, if you get a Fremantle and you get a GWS or you get a Gold Coast and you get a Port Adelaide, how many Melburnians, how many Victorians are going to go? Yes, you're going to get the Port fans that are going to come. Gold Coast and GWS, unfortunately, they're the kind of wild cards. We don't know what their fan bases are going to do over the next 5 to 10 years because they are in primarily NRL country. So we'll really have to see. So, but it's one of those, I heard somebody say, well, why don't we do it like the Olympics every 4th year? Then it's a traveling grand final. I'm like, it's a thought. Again, I think the MCC is they're kind of strong arming the AFL about trying to be there, and we won't get into that. But again, it's just I thought it was fascinating. The Victorian media brought it up, so I thought it was fascinating. So,
Don, it's like if any Victorian side that plays interstate side in grand final, that they get the home ground advantage. So which is unfair. But to be true national, as it's supposed to be, that's mine. I've had arguments as well, Donnie, that now we've got to get away from this tradition and make it the true what the competition is made about.
It'll be fascinating. So, and then now we'll actually to the latest one, which is kind of a break of tradition, it's a steal of another tradition. Is the AFL this year is going to have Gather Round, which again, don't get me started on the name. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I find this thing fascinating to me because all 9 games are going to be in South Australia, where you happen to be at. And again, South Australia, footy mad. I think it will be a fantastic situation. But I'm interested as a South Australian, what are your thoughts on this? And then do you plan on attending any games of Gather Round?
Look, as I said, it's great for Adelaide. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be a bit of an economic boost for us if we get a lot of the interstate people coming over and spending money and staying places. It'll only be good for obviously they're playing in country centres as well. So it's not just Adelaide Oval they're playing. They are playing in suburban grounds and country. So it's going to be good for the country areas that finally have some sort of access or AFL teams playing there, regardless not being just trial games, which is usually trial games. LA Crows or Port do play out there, but there's going to be a real AFL game out there. But whether I like it or not, that's sort of still in argument stage because I just don't think it's right. Because obviously Western Australia said, "Hey, we did the right thing during COVID as well, but we're not getting this economic boost that the Adelaide are getting now." I think they're giving it to us because we did. From memory, it was because we did some good things during COVID. But is that why we should get every team playing Adelaide one weekend? I don't think so.
From what I gather, and this is me going off, I think it's one of those where Gil McLaughlin and some of the uppers in AFL love what the NRL does with Magic Round, But as I stated in one of my episodes, I said it's a little bit different when it comes to the AFL because with Magic Round in the NRL, there are really only 3 states that have teams: Queensland, New South Wales, and then the Melbourne Storm when it comes to Victoria. So you don't have as much area of traveling supporters. So Brisbane, there's a lot of Queensland clubs in the NRL. There's a lot of clubs in New South Wales. It's not like it's that far to go up to Brisbane from Sydney or any of the Sydney based or the New South Wales based NRL clubs. It is very easy for fans to get up there. AFL's got this massive issue of Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and Western Australia. That's 5 states. So there's even more. So yes, you may have a bigger audience to bring people in, but it's much, much further for fans to come no matter where you place it. Is South Australia a middle ground for this particular first year? Yes. And I think it's also your Premier Malinowskis basically told the AF, basically kind of hijacked the AFL and says, if you give it to New South Wales and it sucks, we're not going to want it. And the AFL kind of went, oh, okay, you can have it. Like, and that's kind of how it came off. I know the South Australian fans are probably going to go to it, so I think it's going to work out. But it was very, very interesting how this kind of all came together. Again, do I think it's great for Adelaide? Yes. I'm hoping interstate fans go, but I still think South Australians will go because they love footy. They're going to go. And the SANFL has a bye week, if I remember correctly, so they're not even playing. So there'll be plenty of people able to go. I just pray there's no rain because the Adelaide Oval is going to get destroyed if there is less than ideal weather for that one. So the Adelaide Oval, if I'm a groundskeeper of the Adelaide Oval, I'm just praying it doesn't rain because
exactly. But what it's done, Don, it's sort of caused another debate. We don't need more debates in AFL football as it is, but just what does LA get? And this debate goes nationally, and then the media get hold of it and everything else. It's just caused. Look, it'd be great for Adelaide. I'm an Adelaide boy, it'd be fantastic. But is it fair for the national competition? That's another debate again.
Yeah. Well, and last time I had heard, all the hotels in Adelaide for that particular weekend are booked. Like there are no empty rooms. So it sounds like the interstate travel and the tourism is going to absolutely boom, which again, I think is fantastic for South Australia. As you kind of said, unfortunately, Australia, one of their biggest economy things is tourists and people coming into town. So it's something that unfortunately with the way COVID kind of handled, you didn't get that. So like I said, I cross my fingers that it works. It actually is an extra round of footy this year. So it'll be fascinating to see how it affects the ladder having one more game this year. It'll be fascinating for that one. So alrighty, we get to some of my favorite questions. My last 3 questions are always a lot of fun. As I say, I have never been to Australia. It is on my bucket list. I was even told online this week by somebody listening to one of my episodes. She goes, you gotta add Adelaide Oval to your bucket list stop. And I go, oh yeah, you're right. I really kind of do. So now I have the SCG,
Come on over,
the
Donnie.
MCG,
Absolutely.
the Adelaide Oval. Well, and I have friends in Perth that want me to get out to Optus. I have a few friends in Brisbane that want me to come to. Like, I joke, if I ever get down there, I could probably go to each of the states that have footy and be able to crash on somebody's couch to catch a game. It will cost me a pretty penny, but it'd be worth it. So we'll have to see.
Definitely.
So I asked this of you. I want to be sure that when I go, I'm fully and completely prepared. So as Americans, we love our food when it comes to sporting events. So I asked this, what is your go-to food when you go to the footy?
As in beforehand, if I take to a local game?
Either or, at the ground or before.
At Adelaide Oval, there's restaurants all along the the Torrens, the Torrens beforehand, sorry. Gee whiz, there's all along North Terrace. There's probably a lot of restaurants there where anything from any food you like there. So it's along North Terrace, which then it's only a short walk to Adelaide Oval, mate. So definitely along there. So absolutely pick and choose what you like.
All right.
Anything from spare ribs to vegetarian, you've got it all.
Awesome. It sounds fantastic. I know many, the most popular one has been the meat pie when it comes to at the ground, but I've been surprised. Hot chips has come up a lot. The bucket of hot chips has been the second most popular when it comes to on the ground. So it'd be fascinating. And then I heard
the Chico roll still going too. I'm not sure if you know anything about Chico rolls. So I had one at the cricket the other week, and gee whiz, they still taste just smish.
Well, and I know South Australia is known for its chicken salt too, and I'm fascinated by I'm fascinated by this. It's not something we ever get up here. Not something we ever get up here. In fact, after we're done with the podcast, I got to tell you about a package that I got just before Christmas. I don't want to waste podcast time on that. So, my next question, this is more of my favorite one. When you go to the footy, where is your go-to place to sit? I want to know, where's the best place to watch the footy at the grounds?
At Adelaide Oval, I love it on the lawn. There's a grassed area, which they kept for heritage reason when they got rid of the old Adelaide Oval. I still love the grassed area. We can sit in the grandstands and high up and everywhere, but I just love sitting on. That's where obviously it's all, all the big supporters are. They, they scream and shout, but no affinities or anything like that. It's just great being on the lawn. There's the bar there. You'd sit with your mates. It's just a great atmosphere there. So even the cricket, I was on the lawn a week and a bit ago. So the football is exactly the same. I just love being part of the football, not sitting down, and you may sit next to some clowns that you don't want to sit next to, or they're yelling something silly. But on the lawn there, it's just fantastic. The kids can run around, and if it's not that packed, but certainly a great atmosphere there by the scoreboard there, the old heritage listed scoreboard. And I hope that stays.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that, and I know it's something that many in Adelaide take very good pride on. So the last question I asked this, and again, this is so much fun for me because I've actually started trying to find some of these. Can you tell me your favorite game of footy you have ever seen, live, on the telly, at the ground? Doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen?
There's probably two, as I keep saying, that 1993 grand final, we won that first grand final. It was just because it was the first one, and because it was a team I'm so passionate about that finally won. And then just to go back to the grand afterwards, it's just an amazing one. Then there was the 2011 grand final, where Eagles beat Central. Central's had beaten us, I think, in 3 or 4 grand finals before the 2011 one. So they were our arch enemy. And we actually won. We actually come from 5th spot. So we finished 5th that year, but end up winning the grand final by 2 points. And that was the greatest game of football I've ever seen in a grand final, to win by 2 points and coming from 5th spot at the same time. So if you talk about anything else, it's probably the 1989 VFL grand final when Hawthorn versus Geelong. That was when I think all those people went to hospital afterwards. It was just it was sort of a bit of a dirty game, but it was just one of those games where everyone gave everything, and at the end they were all depleted. But it was just a game that, gee whiz, in the end of the day, it was only won by 6 points in such a tough contested game. Fantastic. So just those three, every one. But that's a good question, because how can you all the games I've watched, but those three certainly stand out.
Yeah, they're always the ones that I love when they describe them, because they're the ones you can close your eyes and you can see them. And those are the ones that I absolutely love. Like I've got one that really helped me kind of solidify who I was going to support when it comes to the Sydney Swans, the 2012 grand final. I tell many people that is the game that solidified me as a Swans fan, not as a homer, not as a bandwagon fan, as some might say. I just love their style, the way they tackled the blue collarness. And that's one of those that, for many Americans, sometimes it's how we could perceive ourselves, what our characteristics that we love about things we usually want in our sports teams. And that was one of those where it was like, it hit me. So it was like hard, aggressive tackling, always tough effort, always high pressure. Absolutely loved it. And I just fell in love with that style of the footy. And that's one of the main factors that helped me become a Swan supporter. So absolutely fantastic. So,
and it's always the one that you're passionate about too, Donnie. I mean, obviously that one with Leo Barry taking that mark with like 3 seconds to go in 2005. So that when you're passionate about the Swans and you take that mark like that just makes that sort of game every much sweeter as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and breaking a 72-year drought and hearing stories of grandmothers getting tattoos because they finally got to see a premiership. It's fascinating. So, all right, that is going to do it for my questions, Darcy. I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories and everything about Woodville-West Torrens. It's been fantastic learning about it. Genuinely appreciate you having you on the show today.
Donnie, that was awesome. And obviously, thanks to Mickey Ozzie, or Kim Harrison as most people know him. But no, Donnie, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and good luck with it all. And well done with your program too, mate. I think to interview some people from Adelaide halfway around the world, I think is amazing as well. So well done. Thank you.
Oh, I try my best. Like I said, I thoroughly have enjoyed meeting all these Australians and being able to share my passion for the sport and being able to talk the sport that I've thoroughly just wrap my arms around, because I think it's one of the best games in the world. It's so fascinating to watch again. It's caused me many a sleepless night, but it is so worth it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode. Again, keep an eye out. There are more coming. Waffle, VFL, SANFL, and of course, AFL as we creep closer and closer to the AFL season. As we said, I need to get to March, because once the footy season goes, then we have round reviews. And as I said, hopefully some state reviews this year on the channel. So tune back in very, very soon. And that's going to do it. And we will see you again very, very soon.